in business, it's absolutely critical that we build relationships with people, especially when we're starting out in business. We might well start with no customers at all. And obviously, in order to grow and to survive, we need customers. And to be able to grow our customer base, we have to meet people. Not only that, we have to develop relationships with them. And ultimately, we have to try to persuade them to buy from us. So, how do we do that? Normally, when we meet people for the very first time, they will make a decision regarding us pretty quickly, whether or not they find us to be someone that they would like to work with or not. Do they have anything in common with us? Do they, in fact, like us? Research shows, in fact, that people tend to buy from people that they like. So if someone doesn't like you or they can't see anything about you of interest, then they are very unlikely uh, to buy from you. So, how do we go about developing relationships with people that we've never actually met before? And I'm talking about in networking events, I'm talking maybe at trade shows, in those sorts of environments where we are put together to try to expand our network and to develop our relationships with people that we have never met before. I think probably the easiest way of looking at this is in terms of what I would call bonding. So when we meet someone for the very first time, we need to try to create some sort of bond with them very quickly. How do we go about doing that? Well, I would say the easiest way to do that is to try to find areas of commonality with the other person. Because if we can see areas of commonality with the other person, if the other person can see things in us which reminds them of themselves, then it's far more likely that a relationship will begin to develop. And the trick is to try to find out from the other person what they like, what they dislike, and see if there's any areas of commonality there. Um, we have to be very careful when we are meeting someone for the very first time that we don't enter into like an interrogation. So, yes, we can ask one or two questions, but we have to be careful not to be too intrusive. And the way in which we can do that is actually be vulnerable ourselves. I'm not talking about telling somebody our entire life story, especially when we've just met them for the first time, because that can be a little bit heavy and also it can turn people completely off. The important thing is maybe just to give people little snippets of information about your life. You could talk about where you just went on holiday. You could slip in the fact that you've got children, and where your daughter or your son has just been on holiday, or what you've just done with your daughter and son. You could talk about a football match that you've just watched. You can talk about a day out somewhere that you've been. Maybe you've been walking or some exercise that you've been doing recently. And the fact that you've done all these things gives somebody a chance to be able to think, yes, I've done something similar to that. And once you have shared some information about your life, the chances are that the person you're talking to will reciprocate and do exactly the same thing. And before you know it, you are getting into a much deeper conversation. And more importantly, you're finding areas of commonality. In fact, it's almost like the other person becomes a member of your tribe, becomes a member of your team. And once you can get to that point, and I'm not saying that you can share areas of commonality on everything. Of course not. We're all very different people. We're from different cultures, and we've got all sorts of different influences on our lives. So we're not going to ever find a carbon copy of ourselves on the other side, but we can nevertheless definitely find little areas of commonality. Those little areas of commonality are the seeds from which strong relationships can grow, the seeds from which trust can grow, the seeds from which eventual orders and relationships, business relationships, can thrive.